Here we go again. We're getting the live stream going again. Blah, 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 blah. Here we go. Nice. Looks like the auto thingy went right away. Again this time. Just have to wait for it to show up in all the places it needs to show up. Blee, 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 blee. Oh. I'll mention this once we start for real, but there we go. Once again, well, it's been hours, longer than I had intended it's been, but okay, okie dokie. Where were we? Got this up, fine. We will start with the same break that we ended with. I don't really need this when I edit things together, but you know, why not? I guess to get in the mood. Did I say that last time? I don't know. Anyway, this part where I'm chatting is only going to be on YouTube. It's not going to be on the audio podcast. But here we go. It was number 8, which was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Here we go.
I wanna be on top of the tree. I wanna be on the floor when I fall off the tree.
Okay, I am back. As promised, it's a number of hours later. Let's see, it's now Monday, September 1st at 6, just before 6:30 UTC. So my goal of actually having this out while it was still Sunday Pacific time is going to fail utterly. It's only half an hour till the end of Sunday Pacific time. Then it'll be Monday. The way these things usually go, I probably won't even finish recording this segment yet, let alone the extra steps I need to do to, export it, put the 3 parts together, and then post process and put it out. So whatever. And also, I've been delaying because, well, first of all, like since I last stopped, I watched some TV with my son, but the more interesting thing, and I think I'm gonna at some point put a video on my YouTube channel. I think you can find my YouTube channel by like searching YouTube for Abulsme, Abulsme, or maybe you have to search for Samuel Minter. I don't know. Let me check. We go to YouTube right now. Anyway, it's not there as I'm recording this, but I think I might put a time lapse here. A few weeks ago, I mentioned that one of the contributing factors to my daughter clipping my car trying to get out of the parking space is that Brandy has an old Buick Riata from like the late 1980s that hasn't moved under its own power in a decade, but is like taking up part of our driveway, but that it wasn't all the way scooched over to the edge of the driveway. Well, today, Brandy and I, well, mainly Brandy. Yeah, I helped, but mainly Brandy, successfully got this car scooched over several feet. And the car, again, has not moved under its own power. We tried putting it in neutral a little while ago and like last week sometime to try to just see if we could just push it back and forward. No luck. Like we needed to back it up, turn the wheel, move forward again. No luck. We couldn't push it. And we tried jump starting the thing. We actually had to have someone from like a mobile mechanic place help us open the hood so we could get to the battery, because like the latches were all rusted shut apparently. But we got the hood open, we got the battery attached, and we got some power to it. Like the screen came on for a second, but then went off again, and we couldn't get it started either. Anyway, so we ended up buying these little rolly things that you can put under the wheels. Um, we got a jack, a nice hydraulic jack, and we got like 4 of these things to go under the wheels. We got the stuff underneath, and basically with a little bit of effort, we were able to just push the car to the left like 6 feet, maybe 8 feet. I don't know. It was anyway. And I've got video of it from the security cameras, and so I may make a time lapse of that and put it on YouTube or something. If I do, I'll mention it in the next episode if I remember. Um, but yeah, like let's see. Can you search YouTube for Abelsmay? Yes, you can search YouTube for Abelsmay, and it will say, "Did you mean abuse?" You did not mean abuse. You meant Abelsmay, and the Samuel Minter channel will come up, and you can look at it. You can subscribe it. You can do whatever, and maybe I'll add this at some point. The most recent video in there right now is still the daddy torture video when Alex made me a drink concoction that he put together of like all the random things on a diner table that you would expect to see in exchange for us having him sign some papers he needed to sign. Because in Washington State, if you're over 13, like in order to have parents be able to talk to your doctors and stuff, you have to sign stuff. And he drove a hard bargain. I had to drink this in order to do that. But yeah, so that's done. And we moved the car successfully. So now I have to figure out what I'm actually going to talk about for this segment, because I promised a newsy thing. No, dude, I'm live. Go. No. Son is interrupting me doing stuff, and now I've got more editing work when this goes lot. So part 3. For anybody who watches the YouTube version of this, you'll see all this. For everybody else, I'm gonna I make notes of like the parts I'm gonna edit out of the audio version, and this will be one of them. Anyway, on the YouTube, like the daddy torture video, before that we had like me doing a stupid dance, and then before that we had me playing a CPM game. And yeah, I don't really have a lot on my YouTube channel. These videos go on the Curmudgeon's Corner YouTube channel. There used to be more from many years ago, but I just haven't been posting much there lately. There have been a couple TikToks lately on my personal TikTok. There's obviously I've been posting clips from this show on the Curmudgeon's Corner TikTok. Although I'm behind still. I'm way behind. I'm like a month behind. But the very most recent video I posted on TikTok was a clip from the July 27th episode, I think. July 26th, the July 26th episode. And it has more views than any other so far. Like, as I'm recording this, 3,982 views, 37 likes, and 6 comments. That's more views than any other TikTok clip I've posted by like more than double. The previous record was 1,287. So we'll see. I don't know. Like TikTok's picking up, but I need to catch up. Okay, what was? Yeah, like what I actually am talking about for like this episode on like actual newsy stuff for like actually now. One of the things, besides all that like useful stuff, moving the car and stuff that I did, I also delayed a little bit because I wasn't sure which thing I wanted to talk about. I rattled off the list in the last segment. I'll rattle it off again right now. trying to fire the Fed governor Cook, um, the Bolton raid, the occupying DC and talking about occupying Chicago, and of course they did something in LA last month. Um, Decimating the CDC. Um, Look, let me sort of munge all these things together into one topic, which is basically things are getting bad fast. Whether, you know, there's been the question, people keep asking, are we moving towards an autocracy? What is our democracy in danger? Blah, blah, blah. Look, and I've said before, this isn't a thing where you just wake up one day and it's over. There is a gradual degradation that happens. But I mean, I say gradual, but I mean, it's been 8 months, January, February, March. Well, end of January. Anyway, it hasn't even been a full year yet. The damage being done by the Trump administration is huge already and accelerating quickly. At this point, we've had 2 cities where the National Guard has been called in and the military has been called in LA as well, to do police work and help with ICE stuff. So we're sort of getting used to, oh yeah, Trump is calling in the military again, calling in the National Guard. They're wandering around the streets of an American city again. The talk is Chicago's next, and the more that it happens, and also I'll add, the more that it's sort of been uneventful for the most part. There were a few little clashes in LA. In DC, no one's taken the bait. It almost seems like the desire is to get these people out here, get them confrontational, hope for some sort of conflict between protesters and these folks. And so far that hasn't really happened. Nothing is blown up. There hasn't been a major escalation of violence. It seems like the kind of thing that at any moment could, but so far we've avoided that. And in LA, they did their little cosplaying for a few weeks and then it's kind of died down to nothing. I don't know if they're still present. Haven't heard about it much lately. We've heard about the DC situation, but the DC folks have mostly, with a couple of exceptions, deployed to parts of the city that didn't really have a huge crime problem to begin with. They're going to the rich neighborhoods and the mall where all the federal buildings are, and Georgetown where there are lots of restaurants and stuff. I did see, and so like not much has happened in terms of a real difference to sort of this crime thing. They have been supporting grabbing potential people who don't have their papers in order for immigration purposes. But it's sort of like it goes on and nothing major happens. And so it's like, oh, so if Trump goes into Chicago, then it's like, oh, okay, there's another city. And then maybe Detroit's next, or Pittsburgh, or Seattle, where I am. And you sort of, people talk about normalizing, but that's what happens, is you sort of start thinking, oh, well, there he goes again. Nothing really bad happened last time. Maybe nothing bad will happen this time. And then the outrage sort of naturally. Alex, you will not get any attention after I'm done if you interrupt a third time. I'm not really mad, but I get completely out of my thought process when he interrupts. I'm going to have to note another thing. Let's see. And that was at 15 minutes. Okay. But it's all part of the normalization. You sort of stop. You get acclimatized to it, and then the outrage is not as much as it was before, but it really should be. And I mentioned the ICE stuff. I mean, that's horrid, but it's been going on more or less. It's been going on. Hold on. I'm going to close the door again. I mean, we talk about the ICE stuff, and that's horrid. But it's been going on for months and months now at basically the same kind of levels. We hear about the same kind of story, people being pulled off the street. And the first few times you hear it, you see it, it's absolutely shocking. The 30th time, it's a little bit less so. The 100th time, it doesn't even get the attention. It's just like, it's the background. But we've got essentially concentration camps being set up with people who are captured. There was a news story in the last week or two about how the number of people in these detention centers has hit a new all-time high. And we've heard that the conditions at these places are horrible. There were, some of the stuff is going through the courts, and they have been ordered in a few places to improve the conditions. This alligator Alcatraz nickname thing has been ordered to shut down. But it's, you start, just the natural thing is, we've heard about that already. And so it's hard to maintain the constant level of outrage. And along those same lines, we talked about, firing, trying to fire, I should say, it's still legally up in the air, trying to fire the Fed governor. We now have a long history of Donald Trump and his minions firing all kinds of people in the federal government, and doing so for no real reason other than they aren't 100% towing the line. Donald Trump is all about loyalty. Donald Trump is all about, the only purpose of the federal government is to enact my will. The idea of a professionalized civil service is anathema. Yeah. So the in a healthy organization, You want your underlings to have independent ideas and opinions. You want them to tell you when you're wrong. You want them to uh, provide opinions and expertise in things where the leader is weak. That is, Donald Trump doesn't believe any of that. Donald Trump is just do what I say, do what I say, and shut up. And if you express any doubt or any alternative opinion or anything other than that, you're out of here. Now, the way things were set up in the federal government was that the top layers were supposed to be like that. Look, the top layers are supposed to be political appointees who enact the policies of the president and they serve at the president's will. But all kinds of lower levels are supposed to be technocratic, are supposed to be based on expertise. And that's not what's going on here. And this flows right into, I mean, and I was going to jump to the CDC, but let's talk about the Fed a little bit. They have really long terms as Fed governors intentionally because it is supposed to be non-political. It is supposed to be independent of the president. They're supposed to last multiple presidents. They're only the president is allowed to dismiss them, quote unquote, for cause. But like a lot of these things, for cause is not defined. So that's why it's in court now. Like, for a good cause or just any cause. And if it is good cause, what defines that? And the law is unclear on that because, they expect people not to take advantage of it. But this I can easily see this going not straight, but eventually getting to the Supreme Court. And maybe lower courts will say, for a cause, it needs to be a reasonable cause. It needs to be something well defined and that makes sense, that has the right level of magnitude. And of course, if in the Fed governor case, he's said there's evidence of mortgage fraud. Now, they haven't actually supplied that evidence of mortgage fraud at this point. Apparently, there's some issue potentially with what she claimed as a primary home versus a secondary home, whatever. It's unclear. Maybe something there, maybe something's not. Does it rise to the level necessary here anyway? I don't know. One of Trump's things, of course, is, and she is not the first one that he's had investigated for mortgage fraud, which, by the way, is almost assuredly like everything's projection here, because of course one of the charges against him was related to mortgage fraud. And so now he's going to go out and get everybody else for mortgage fraud. Now, there are differences in scale, differences in degree. We'll see. Like if evidence ever actually comes out on this, then we'll find out. But she hasn't been charged with anything. No evidence has been presented yet. Maybe there's something there, maybe there's not. But everyone, the consensus is like, this is not a case where the mortgage fraud was blatant and obvious and therefore needed to be gone after no matter what. Now, of course, Donald Trump will say the exact same thing about the charges against him. His line all along has been, if I wasn't the ex-president, they wouldn't have gone after me for any of these things. And maybe he's right on some of them. But that I've said before, I think that's actually a problem. They should have gone after Donald Trump for his miscellaneous crimes as far back as the 1970s. I mean, we've got plenty of information about things that he's done that have at the very least been unethical, but I think in many cases have been illegal as well, going back decades and decades and decades, and people just didn't go after him, you know? Now, in this case, if she actually did something wrong, absolutely. And same thing with the Bolton thing. If he's actually got classified documents, absolutely go after him. Do the proper investigation, go after him. Whether she should be fired or resign over it in the meantime while the investigation is ongoing, I don't know. But the clear motivation here seems to be get her out of the way so he can appoint someone to replace her, so he can get a majority on the Fed and force interest rates down. And as a trial run to see if he can fire Powell as well. Because if he can fire her, he can fire Powell. He'll dig up something. People said that the old Soviet phrase is, I think it was a Stalin thing actually, was show me the person and I'll show you the crime. With the basic notion that almost anybody, probably everybody, if you dig deep enough, you can find laws they broke, because there are so many laws about so many things. The simplest example is, I don't think you can find, maybe out of the millions and millions of drivers on this planet, you could find one. But show me somebody who hasn't broken the speed limit at least once. Come on. Even by accident, right? Like, did you go 22 in the 20 mile per hour zone? Throw the book at you. And the thing is, the book allows for more serious, in almost all cases, there's a range of potential punishments. And there's a lot of discretion involved. And so very few people are actually going to get pulled over and get a ticket for going 22 in a 20 zone. If you go 40 in a 20 zone, completely different story. And even within that, there's a range of potential punishments you may get. A lot of this varies municipality by municipality, state by state. Some of the places have very regimented rules, some of them have less regimented rules. But the point is, there's a lot of discretion there. And that discretion is often a good thing. But if the way you are using your discretion is universally go after your enemies and leave your friends alone, that's problematic. And to the folks who say, well, that's exactly what the Clinton administration was doing against Donald Trump, I just don't think the facts back that up. If anything, it shows how careful and how reluctant they were and how they really didn't want to do that, but sort of had to. And even when they did so, they made sure to cross the T's and dot the I's and do as much as possible in the right way. Hell, like a lot of the investigations they were complaining about happened during the first Trump administration, and then we had more during the Clinton during the Biden administration, obviously. But I think if anything, there's evidence that like they were being super careful and they recognized the gravity of going after an ex-president and were extremely cautious about it, and have been criticized over and over again for being as cautious as they were. And meanwhile, there was tons of evidence of really serious stuff, So, but we're normalizing this. We've opened investigations, and in the prediction show at the end of last year, I had predicted there'd be lots of investigations along these lines, but that I didn't think any indictments would hit yet. Um, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's so far a little more than halfway through the year. Well, we're getting close to 3/4 of the way through the year. Um, that's pretty much what's happened. There have been a bunch of investigations. He's opened investigations in a lot of his political enemies, but there haven't been any indictments yet. And within, people who actually work for the executive branch, he's fired a bunch of people and made things miserable enough for other people to resign. But the long and short of this is the notion of the non-political expertise basis expertise based portions of the federal government have been eviscerated. You know, there've been, DOJ already. There were lots of people fired from there, and their priorities have been turned around. The biggest example from this week is CDC. Um, I think he eventually actually fired the director there. Like there was some back and forth on has he actually fired her yet personally, because it was being done by intermediaries and tweets and blah blah blah. And whether or not she's technically been legally fired or not, I think she's filing a lawsuit too. Um, but she's locked out. She's not actually getting into the building anymore. She's not doing the job. Um, and a whole bunch of other people at CDC have resigned based on this. And the dispute was, in this case, like she was in a position that serves at the will of the president. She was a political appointee, so he has every right to fire her. He's not even violating civil service protections for that one. The only dispute was, does he have to do it himself by calling her up directly? And honestly, I feel that's kind of a weak case. Like he should be able to do it by directing somebody else to take the legal actions. But the reason for the dispute in this case was she basically refused to go along with some of RFK Jr.'s non-scientific anti-vax nonsense. Uh, they were looking for and have started to at this time change vaccination guidelines for the COVID vaccine in terms of what's recommended. They also had FDA change what's allowed, because I shouldn't quite say it that way. There are a lot of pharmacies and insurance and etc. that if CDC and FDA don't recommend something, even if they're not saying it's not allowed, if they don't recommend something, then they will not proceed with it. There were a bunch of stories about how CVS has now restricted the vaccine in many, many states based on the guidance this week, the COVID vaccine. You can, even in those cases, I guess you can still get it private. You can still get a doctor's prescription. Well, in some states, it's not available at all. But in other places, you need a doctor's prescription. In other like, and look, the guidelines they put out. I'm getting tangent a little bit. The guidelines they put out are fairly easy to. First of all, there's a list of pre-existing conditions that's pretty darn long that says you can still get the vaccine if you have any of these. I've got at least 2 or 3 of the pre-existing conditions that say you can get it. So, like, I'll be able to get it. I'm also in Washington State, where anybody will still be able to get it, basically. But there are conditions on the list apparently that are things like oh, I'm fairly sedentary. You know, okay, you can just lie about that kind of stuff. You know, um, and I've seen places that in other places, it's just self attestation anyway. Do you have any of these conditions? Yes. Okay, here's your shot. They don't check. But anyway, the director was upset that he was pushing some of this stuff with no good science behind it. In fact, the good science says the opposite. And all indications are he's going to go all in on more of this in terms of, blaming vaccines potentially for autism, potentially for other things. Um, Basically, hamstringing the CDC to come up with justifications for the opinion he already has rather than actually following the science. So there's already been cases where they're looking at cherry picking evidence. They're looking at interpreting things in ways that do not match expert opinion. RFK Jr. specifically saying paying attention to experts is not what you do in a democracy. What? Give me a break. You don't. I'm sorry. It's just so ridiculous. Like, you know, let's. You, there are certain things that you don't just want to have a vote on and go with what the public thinks. You want to ask someone who knows what the fuck they're doing. And then you do that. And look, there are always disagreements. Like, there's the nature of science is nothing is ever 100% settled. And lots of things are subtle. And there's not like one single answer. And there's complications and all kinds of caveats. And that's just the nature of the beast. And so you have a bunch of experts who can debate and come to a consensus and just recommend an approach, and sometimes they're wrong, but it's the best you can do at that moment. The one thing you don't do is have some jackass who doesn't even believe that germs are real, which, by the way, RFK wrote about that in one of his books, that he believes a long discredited, like 17th and 18th century theory of the miasma explanation of diseases, and other stuff. It's basically like he doesn't believe in germs. He basically undo the last 100 to 200 years of medical progress in terms of understanding what the hell is actually going on with people's health. It's just unbelievable. Anyway, so there's no surprise that a bunch of CDC people are unhappy with that and are leaving. I mean, a whole bunch of them were fired anyway already in multiple rounds of layoffs. Of the ones that are left, the ones that are leaving. I know they're ones trapped because they don't know where else they can go and are hoping that they can hunker down and still do some good where they are. But fundamentally, you are taking one of the premier public health institutions in the world, which has not been perfect. They made some mistakes during COVID, especially in the first few months of COVID. They made some big mistakes. Like, there was that whole thing about insisting on using their own tests instead of using the European tests, and because of that, delaying things by a couple months. And there was the whole thing of being slow to realize it really was a fully airborne disease and not just droplets. And therefore, the quality of mask mattered. So it wasn't just use a mask. You needed to say use a good mask. And there's been a whole bunch of things CDC has done wrong. They're not perfect. but they were still one of the best, if not the best, such institutions in the world. They've been destroyed. And no one can trust them at this point because there's no faith that they're actually making determinations based on the science at this point. And, you know, things that they publish are being put through like political review before they can go out. They've been prohibited from talking about certain topics at all. It's bad. And this is just the latest example of the federal agencies that are being systematically made ineffective. You know, I mean, we had all the USAID foreign aid stuff costing potentially millions of lives by taking away that aid from places it was really needed. Now we have, it's also going to cost lives. They do good work there. Even when they make mistakes, they're trying their damn best. Now they can't try their best anymore. And, you know, it all comes back to Steve Bannon's comment about deconstructing the administrative state. This was all in Project 2025 too, for all the people who are like, oh, that's all made up. That's not really anything Donald Trump's going to be doing. I saw there's one website, I don't have it handy, but they're tracking like exactly what of Project 2025 has already been implemented. Let me see if I can find it really quick. Project 2025 implementation tracker. Here we go. Okay. This website, project2025.observer. And basically, they've got a nice little tracker here. Let's see. What they track is 47% of what was in Project 2025 has already been implemented. So that's there are 317 total objectives that they distilled out of Project 2025. 116 are done, 63 more in progress. And the agencies where this has gone the furthest, there were 6 objectives for USAID, 100% complete. There was 1 objective for the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, 100% complete. For White House itself, 13 objectives, 92% complete. Department of State, 10 objectives, 75% complete. U.S. Agency for Global Media, 3 objectives, 67% complete. And then it goes down from there. And they if you go to this website, they track it objective by objective by objective. So for instance, the latest was the Department of Labor, provide robust accommodations for religious employees. Note, OPM issued a memo that allow federal workers to promote their religious beliefs to colleagues, display religious items at work, and pray together or individually. And then they've got sources for that one. Before that, at the CDC, promote fertility awareness-based methods as opposed to contraception for family planning. Note, the administration is rerouting birth control funds to menstrual cycle education classes to try to prevent pregnancy without using birth control. And look, all of this stuff is, you know, you could say, well, what's objectionable about those things? Well, in the CDC example, it's because there have been plenty of studies about what's effective and what's not in terms of birth control. And the fertility awareness stuff is much, much less effective. So if you've got $1 to spend, you want to spend it on the stuff that's more effective, not the stuff that's less effective. And on the accommodations for religious employees, look, as far as I know, well, I'm not going to get out over my skis, but I have no problem with, someone wearing religious headgear or a religious necklace or otherwise, discreetly doing stuff. But this is allowing proselytizing. This is allowing somebody in the workplace, and this is federal employees in a federal place, to try to convert me while I'm at work. No, that's not okay. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And look, it's again, deconstruction of the administrative state. It is step by step, agency by agency, taking away the effectiveness of government where it has been built up over time. Now, and this is, there was another conservative goal going back years that didn't work, called Starve the Beast, which was basically take the budget away from the federal government to the point where it becomes ineffective. And then you can make the argument that government is bad at XYZ and therefore shouldn't do it at all, and we should privatize these things. This is essentially the next level extension of that. Yes, they are reducing the budget to many of these things, but even where they couldn't reduce the budget because, and they're doing that too, by the way. They're taking away funding from things that Congress has approved. But they're step by step taking away the ability to be effective, even when the money is still there. And it's part of that same strategy. It's like, the argument all along has been government shouldn't be doing these things. And you would often hear this couched as government is not good at these things. Sometimes government hasn't been the best way to do some of these things. And when it's not, we should absolutely look at the alternatives. But in many cases, the reason government hasn't been good is because it's been hamstrung in one way or another. But in this case, they're taking even the things that government has been good at and has been having positive effects. They're systematically breaking it. They're breaking every aspect of the federal government one piece at a time. And part of the reason for that is so that you can then more effectively make the argument that government sucks at this, it shouldn't do it at all, we should let the private sector do that. I think so far, they're breaking the military too. What am I even saying? They're doing all kinds of things that are going to make the military less effective as well. But I'm not sure we're quite at the privatize the military part yet. But we are certainly at the whole, just like with everything else, the notion of a professionalized military who has certain rules that they operate by and certain things that are okay and certain things that are not. I think that's anybody who expresses any sort of dissent or question about that is gone or going to be gone. They're getting rid of trans people. They're getting rid of women. Like, I believe at this point, all of the female generals have been fired. If not all of them, certainly a lot of them at the highest levels for sure. Maybe there's still some at lower levels. They, to go back to how I started this segment, it's getting bad. Point by point, step by step, power is being centralized in the president. And, even if Donald Trump does die and it becomes J.D. Vance, by the way, latest speculation I saw, which resonates with me, is he probably had some non-hospital medical procedure that they could do at the White House. He was probably told about it several weeks ago, which explains why, he was all talking about his mortality and wanting to get into heaven and all this kind of crap. And then he had the procedure and he's been recovering, and he's like, from whatever the procedure was, it was something they could do at the White House. They didn't have to take him to the hospital, but it put him out of commission for a couple days, and now he's recovering. Makes perfect sense. I saw an account called Hilly on TikTok that said that. So yeah, it's specifically Hilly the nurse. There you go. TikTok.com/@Hilly the nurse. Made perfect sense to me. But anyway, the point is, they're consolidating power in executive to an extent we haven't seen in this country. Donald Trump is right up at, I'd say he's past the verge of defying court orders. It hasn't been brought to a head at the Supreme Court yet, but he's been defying court orders left and right. He's been making changes to spending that should have to be authorized by Congress. He's been shutting down agencies that were authorized by Congress that should only be shut down by Congress. He's practicing putting troops domestically in various places. It's getting bad fast. We're seeing things that I was going to say, you would be shocked to even see being considered if you went back 10 or 20 years. But that led me to think of the standard cliche, like, can you imagine if Obama had done this? How this very same people who are rah Donald Trump are happy about these things when Donald Trump is doing it. Can you even imagine if Obama had been doing this kind of stuff? There'd already be, armed insurrection. But what the hell am I talking about? There was one on January 6th. Although a lot of people there had weapons, it didn't actually escalate into a battle from both sides with firearms anyway. I mean, obviously they were beating people with flag poles and fire hydrants and all kinds of things. But anyway, I think it's just going to get worse before it gets better. And I'm not, and even if Donald Trump is replaced by J.D. Vance, I don't have a lot of faith that it's going to get better fast. Keep watching. Try not to get too accustomed to all this stuff. I mean, people said don't normalize things from the very first day Donald Trump was elected, before he even became president. And of course, what we've been doing, it's human nature. We like get used to things, and then that is just the normal. Oh, there goes Donald Trump again. There he goes violating another norm. There he goes violating another law. It's not even news anymore because he does it every day. Try to retain the outrage, because we have to. In the meantime, like I said, I don't see a way that it doesn't get worse before it gets better. And on that happy note, let's wrap up the show. I've gone a lot longer in this segment than I had intended. Curmudgeon-corner.com. You can find our archives. You can find all the ways to contact us. You can find transcripts. And I still haven't linked the TikTok. I mentioned the TikTok. You can search for Curmudgeon's Corner on TikTok. You'll find it. And I reserved the handle for Blue Sky, but I haven't set up anything. So Curmudgeon's Corner is not yet posting on Blue Sky, but we are on Mastodon. You'll find that. And of course, there's a link to a Patreon where you can give us money at various levels. We'll mention you on the show. We'll ring a bell, send you a postcard, send you a mug. Soon, I'll set it up so you can just buy a mug if you want to buy a mug. I haven't done it yet. Maybe someday. And of course, at $2 a month or more in the Patreon, we will invite you to the Curmudgeon's Corner Slack, where Yvonne and I and a bunch of listeners are chatting throughout the week, sharing links, and all kinds of other stuff. Should I do the highlight? Sure. Here's something from the Curmudgeon's Corner Slack that I have not mentioned on the show. There was an article on the BBC. Taco Bell rethinks AI drive-thru after man orders 18,000 waters. This is exactly what you think it is. A whole bunch of fast food restaurants are experimenting with having AIs man the drive-thru. So when you talk at the drive-thru and make your order, there's an AI talking to you instead of a human being. McDonald's tried this a few months back and had to shut it down pretty quickly because it was doing all kinds of weird things like putting bacon in ice cream. And although, I think about that, I'm like, maybe that would be okay. Maybe I should try that. But yeah, let's see. Last year, McDonald's withdrew AI from its own drive-thrus as the tech misinterpreted customer orders, resulting in one person getting bacon added to their ice cream in error and another having hundreds of dollars worth of chicken nuggets mistakenly added to their order. This guy with the 18,000 waters was obviously just trying to screw with the AI. In another example from this AI, the Taco Bell AI, it kept asking, would you like a drink with that? Would you like a drink with that? Over and over and over again, after the guy had said what drink he wanted. And it just would never end. It got into a loop. It got stuck. Anyway, AI is awesome. Look, I'm using it for a bunch of stuff. The question is where it's being used, where it's actually beyond what it's actually good at yet. I'm sure it'll get better, but people keep trying to push the limits, and bad things are going to happen. More than just 18,000 waters at the Taco Bell drive-thru. Something massive is going to get screwed up at some point. We already had the AI determine the tariff levels, the initial tariff levels. So what am I saying? Geez. Okay. That's it. I'm done. I'm out of here. Hopefully Yvonne will be back next week. Have a great time, everybody. Stay safe. All the stuff I usually say. And it is indeed after midnight Pacific time as I'm wrapping this up. It's coming close to 12:30 a.m. on Monday Pacific time. Coming close to 7:30 UTC. I'll get this sucker out. Probably, sometime Monday. Whatever. I'm late. Podcast is later than I like it to be, but it's not the first time it's come out on Monday. It's even come out on Tuesday before of the week after. I anchored this in the week it's supposed to be for because I started on Saturday. There's one podcast per Sunday through Saturday week, and this one started on Saturday, so it counts, damn it. Haven't missed one. Not going to now. But I have been several days late finishing and posting them before because of things like this, where I space it out over the course of a couple days. Anyway, whatever. Here comes the music. Goodbye, everyone. I already said stay safe. Goodbye. Okay, I'm gonna hit stop now. Goodbye to live stream people. We had no live viewers this time, but last week we apparently did have some people watch a good chunk of the podcast, if not even all of it, on the live stream. Well, on the recording of the live stream on YouTube. So, hi to anybody on YouTube, and goodbye. Hi, goodbye. Whatever. I'm hitting stop. Bye, folks.